and welcome to another booktube video from me, Lauren, from Lauren and the Books. Cold, won't put the heating on, cold, won't put the heating on. Today's video is a wrap up of everything that I have read in September. It's the last day of September today, October tomorrow, October outfits tomorrow as well, outfits October. Every time I say it, I don't know if I'm saying the right thing. Outfits October. And I just thought I would talk about the books that I read in the month of September. 8 books were read in the month of September. 4 of them were library books, 3 of them were audio books, and 1 of them was my own book. So not much getting rid of the old shelves this month. That means my total of reading so far in 2022, I've read 94 books so far this year. 28 of those have been library books. That's 30% of my reading. Big thumbs up for that, or this, my niece does this for thumbs up. Big thumbs up for that, because one of my reading resolutions was that I wanted to read more from the library. So to have like almost a third of my reading from the library, delighted about it. 31 books of that have been audio books. That's 33%, so a third of my reading. And then my own books, 28 of those have been my own books. That's 30% of my reading, and 6 of those have been proofs, which is 7% of the reading. So that's the breakdown of the reading. Let's talk about the 8 books that I've read. A lot of those, as they've all been library books or audio books, there's going to be a lot of inserts here. First one is You Made a Fool of Death with Your Beauty by Akweke and Meze. I finished this on the 1st of the month. I really enjoyed this, and I sort of like surprised and a bit low about how much I enjoyed this, because it was sort of full of things that I do not get on with, insta love being one of them. Really gorgeous people having really good sex with each other, and just sort of like sincere art chat as well. But I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it a lot. I really thought the chemistry between the characters was great. It took a bit of a turn towards the end, which I wasn't expecting, and then the sort of bits in between the chemistry and the shagging and the food talk and the art talk were really sort of heartfelt moments about loss and bereavement and things like that. So yeah, I found those bits really tenderly written, and like I said, the sex scenes were very good as well. So yeah, it surprised me how much I enjoyed it. I gave it 4 stars. There we go. Well done, Akweke and Meze. Went on to start reading Pet, because I enjoyed this so much. Then next up, I listened to the audiobook of The Long Call by Anne Kleve. This book in particular I picked. I've never read an Anne Kleve before, and I quite enjoy a mystery, particularly around this sort of time of year for some reason. And I listened to this one in particular because I heard it talked about on the Graham Norton Book Club podcast, which is available through Audible, and they picked this one, and I think it's the first in the series following a police inspector. And he is gay, so in a relationship with, well, married to a man, and his parents were Jehovah's Witness, so very against this. So that sort of like stuff's going on in the background. But I'll be honest, the whole sort of book itself was very police solve murder. There wasn't really much else sort of there, and we always knew this murder was going to be solved, and like I didn't feel like the particular, like I didn't feel gripped by it. I think I'll carry on, I'll give another Anne Kleve a go, but I think because I hold these sort of books in quite high standards in terms of I enjoyed the Nikki French books, particularly the Frida Klein series, so much, I'm forever comparing anything to that, and I think I sort of, the time I read those, I remember starting the first one on Boxing Day and just having like, and just sort of really eating them up during the first lockdown or the second lockdown, maybe the second lockdown, maybe the third lockdown, who knows, a lockdown. So I remember being very sort of immersed in them, and I hold all of those any sort of like similar books to that standard, and they don't quite make it. But I've got another Anne Kleve's book to pick up from the library this time, so to read Something About the Tide. Revenge Tide? Something about the tide. So I'll see how I get on with that. And then next up was the next in the 6 Tudor Queen series. So I'm reading all of these books by Alison Weir. That was the penultimate one I've just read, so I've only got 1 more to read. So I read The Tainted Queen, Katherine Howard, this time. I will link my reading vlog down below, because you'll be able to see me reading the book and seeing how I get on with that. So what I will say is that now 5 books deep into this series, what I'll say is that I really sort of appreciate the structure of these books and how you are really following those queens right up until their dying moment, and in particular in this dying moment, so like the Katherine Howard being beheaded and Boleyn being beheaded, so you really follow them like their lives right up until that moment. And you get a real sort of full picture picture of their lives. Now, in particular with Katheryn, and I mentioned this lots in the vlog if you've seen it, because she lived a shorter life than a lot of these queens. They think she died when she was about 23. You really get to know Katheryn and get to know her personality and get to know that she's just up for a bit of a flirt and a shag with some blokes who basically just treat her like trash and are awful, particularly Henry, who just turns on her in an instant. So yeah, I enjoyed this, but tragic, and she was treated so badly throughout her life. Also, it was quite, because I'm familiar now with a lot of the characters, having read the other books, so like seeing Lady Jane Rochford again, who was married to Anne Boleyn's brother, being troublesome and a bit weird, if I'm being honest, throughout this book. She's very interested in getting Katheryn to sort of have an affair and setting that up for her, and not for really any reason I could find out, other than I think maybe living vicariously through her, which is a bit creepy. But yeah, that character, seeing how sort of instrumental she was in Anne Boleyn's death and Katherine Howard's death, both queens who were beheaded and done for treason. But these women sort of like waiting to die. I thought this when reading Katherine Howard and also reading the Anne Boleyn book, how awful it is, like being told you're condemned to death and then waiting for that moment to happen and being told it's going to be one day and sort of maybe trying to make peace with it, and then it not happening that day. Just like what must have been going through their heads. Mad. But yeah, also, as I said, Henry VIII, trash. Men in general, trash. She gets fucked over by so many different men in that book. In her life, I should say. So yeah, last one. So I'm not going to be reading it in October. I'm going to be reading, because I'm doing Outfits October, in October, as I've mentioned. And because of part of the reading process of these reading vlogs, I like to dress up as the Queen from the musical, Sixth musical. And because I'm doing Outfits October, I didn't think I'd be able to do that. So I will be reading the Katherine Howard book in November, and that's the series done. Can't believe it. I will link the playlist of those, or the videos. I don't know if I've made a playlist. I should do, really. But I'll link the last video and all the other ones down below. And then next up was The Club by Ellery Lloyd. Another, me mentioning Nikki French earlier, which is a husband-wife writing team. This is also a husband-wife writing team. And this is a mystery. I sort of quite enjoyed it. A great multiple perspective mystery about an exclusive club which has been sort of started off in Covent Garden in London, has branches all over the world, in LA and all sorts of places, and the most recent one is an island, the Island Club, which is just off of the Essex coast, and very sort of like Agatha Christie-esque in that you can only get to it at a certain time of the day when the tide's in, and people that work there have to like hand their phone, well, that's not Agatha Christie-esque, but like very sort of private, and people are led to believe that this is like their home. Yeah, that's what the chain of clubs are called, and they can be comfortable and they can do whatever they want, and they're charged sort of like ridiculously expensive fees to be part of this club. And you're hearing about the perspective from some of the women that work there, and one of the guys who is like runs it with his brother. And yeah, then you know from the beginning that there's a murder, and throughout this there's a Vanity Fair article running. It really reminded me of, like, I remember doing, when I was in year 8, doing a War of the Worlds project where we had to write in the style of a newspaper and sort of very sensationalised and things like that, and that writing's very sensationalised and like delivering the facts and all of that, and I was getting very big vibes from that. Not that my writing in year 8 was the standard of this book, but that was what I could see, the devices that were being used in those bits, and then you're hearing from these multiple perspectives on the way out. And I just love a multiple perspective sort of mystery where you're finding out different things at different time, and there was a few moments where I was like, bloody hell, like there was a few shockers in here. I would definitely read more by Ellery Lloyd. I've got People Like Her, I think, somewhere, which is about an influencer. I went to look because it's down there. But yeah, I enjoyed this. I thought it was good fun. So that was up there with the Nikki French one, so I thought it was good. Next up was The Miniaturist by Jessie Burton. So this was a reread for me. I listened to it this time round, and I read it the first time round. I remember getting it out from the library when BookTube had just started, and well, BookTube had just started. I just started watching BookTube. It didn't just start when I arrived. Yeah, so I went to it thinking I will get on to reading the sequel, and didn't manage to do that this month, and probably won't manage to do that this year now. So, but I enjoyed it a bit more this time. I remember finding it a bit sort of bland and not really much to get hold of last time, and I did find the characters a bit more jovial, apart from the last third, which is like extremely tragic. I felt more connected with the characters and the storyline. It was really reminding me, there's a in the Jeanette Winterson Christmas Days collection. There's a short story in there about a doll's house and the people that are in there and things like that. It's a really spooky ghost story. I'm only able to listen to it because I know the end now, so I know how it ends. But yeah, it was really reminding me of that. And the doll's house type of stuff. Yeah, I thought it was fine. I think I'm gonna watch the adaptation. It was on a few Christmases ago, wasn't it? And I will get round to reading The House of Fortune at some point. Then there was a DNF, I always say DNA, did not attend, that's work. DNF, did not finish. And yeah, it was These Impossible Things by Salma El-Wadani. I picked this up and took it away with me in one of my reading vlogs, and I got quite far through it. So I think this is probably why, I mean, 8 books is an amazing amount to read, but it is less than I normally read. But I think it's because this isn't counted and I read like a lot of this. But I found everything so sort of contrived, the way these women were speaking to each other. So it's about 3 Muslim women living in London and their friendship. 2 of the women are going out with white guys who their parents don't know about. And in one case living with them, something happens, and I feel like I maybe missed the boat, but they all have this massive falling out, and I couldn't really work out what this massive falling out was about. But then they just all weren't speaking to each other, and they're longingly looking at these text messages that had been sent months ago and things like that. But yeah, I found every single conversation they had, as I sometimes do with sort of women's contemporary fiction, very sort of like sassy, 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 sassy. Every single retort was like a sexual innuendo, and oh, I know best, and oh, we all know each other so well, and no, and it was just a bit like, ugh. I just felt a bit like that. So because I've taken it away with me, I thought I will read it until I'm back home, and then if I've decided against it, then I won't. And it just, yeah, I just got to the point where I was just like, I'm not enjoying this. Every time I'm picking it up, I'm a bit rolling my eyes. So sadly did not get on with this. Next book though, I did get on with very well, and that was Lessons in Chemistry by Bonnie Gamus. I got this out from the library and it had a 2-week return on it, so I knew I had to read it quick sharp. But yeah, this was a joy to read, you know. I really, really enjoyed it. And what I was sort of surprised about, because it is, I guess it is sort of like women's contemporary fiction, sometimes the protagonists are a bit like too on the quirky side, but I thought the character of, oh my god, I've completely forgotten her bloody name. I literally finished it not even that long ago. Elizabeth Zott. So Elizabeth Zott, our protagonist, is quirky, but is also super likeable, and yeah, really goes through the ringer. I liked this sort of like telling a story about her whole life and her relationships, and then bringing it sort of like up to when she's running. So it's about a chemist, a scientist, Elizabeth Zott, and she meets one of her co-workers, falls in love with him, and it's about their life and their sort of it really examines misogyny in that time period, which is like the 50s and 60s, and sort of how it is reflected in today. Like, so there's a lot of stuff that you think, oh, that stuff used to happen in the 50s and 60s, but it doesn't, it still happens today. And I thought it was great sort of cast of supporting characters, and the plots were really really, like, all the sort of like subplots and the storylines around the supporting characters I really, really enjoyed. I love the chemistry aspect, I love the food aspect. I really liked her running a TV show which was about food but with like a chemistry sort of link to it. I thought it was really good fun, and hopefully my mum and David's mum aren't watching this video. They don't really watch my videos, but we've bought them both it for Christmas because we think, well, they'll both really like it. So yeah, very much enjoyed it. Then next up was The Kitchen Front by Jennifer Ryan, which, because I started reading this first, this was on our Patreon book club book this month for wholesome and cozy reads. I started reading this first, read the first chapter, and then went to Lessons in Chemistry, and they felt a bit similar to begin with because it was sort of like women from recent history and involved in cooking. And I think because I just love Lessons in Chemistry so much, this sort of, I ended up giving this a 2.5 stars. It did deliver, it really did deliver on the sort of like cozy and wholesomeness, and I loved hearing from the 4 women's perspectives. You've got 4 women here during the Second World War, I think it is, who are living in a village and are all competing to be part of or competing in a competition where if you win, you will become the host of a BBC radio programme called The Kitchen Front. And the women all come from different backgrounds, 2 are sisters, and they sort of dealing with various things of the time. I enjoyed the formula of the book in terms of like, because the competition was set over 3 courses, so starter, main and dessert. The book was set over that as well, so I enjoyed that as well, and sort of like the starter, beginning to get to know everyone, the main, like the main aspect, we find out the main things about these characters, and then the dessert sort of bringing it all together. Yeah, I thought it was good, but I didn't love it. I think because I'd read Lessons in Chemistry as well, that's the reason I didn't love it. But I think this is definitely like a very big sort of mum book, and my mum would love to read this. And I sort of listened to a bit of it on audio as well because I was trying to get it read in time, and I was driving home from choir, and I think I'm going to tell my mum to listen to the audiobook of it. So that's that. And then the last book I read was an audiobook which I've literally just finished moments ago, and that is You Are Not a Before Picture by Alex Light. Alex Light, I keep saying Alice Light, but I mean Alex Light. And this is a non-fiction book, a sort of a deep dive into diet culture. Now I'm sort of very, I'm gonna not use the term body positive, because I sort of, from this book, what I'm going to say is that I've learned a lot from this book, and I didn't think I would. Body acceptance is a term that I think is much more far-reaching, and I think there are, although body positivity is a wonderful thing and really helped me out at the time, I feel like maybe there are negative aspects of that body positivity now, which are examined in this book, which I found very interesting. And as I said, I'm fully accepting of my body and have been for a good few years now, which has been amazing. But I learned a lot in this book, and I thought when I was listening to it, I was like, oh, this is just going to sort of like reiterate a few of the views that I've already had in terms of my body acceptance, which I thought was body positivity at the time. But like, there's so much in there to learn about diet culture. One of the main things I remember learning is that BMI was never meant to be something for individuals. It was always meant to be used on a sort of like population basis. And yeah, there's just sort of like a real look at the insidiousness of diet culture and how like we've been made to believe certain things and things like that. Things that I was aware of, but this is just sort of like woken me up to it as well. But yeah, I thought if you're looking to start sort of like body positive, body acceptance journey, or even if you're on that journey, or even if you're as comfortable in your skin as I am, I definitely still think there's things to be learnt about here. And also, I also find with these books as well that they give a whole host of like great accounts to follow on Instagram to sort of like make your Instagram feed much more diverse and accepting of different body types and things like that. So if anything, I gained that from it, but I quite enjoyed it, and I gave it 3 stars. So yeah, those are the 8 books that I read in the month of September. Would love to hear what you guys read. Let me know if you've read any of these books here, and I will see you all again soon, tomorrow, for me October TBR.